If you knew me before, you wouldn't even look my way. If I had the nerve to speak, you wouldn't hear what I say. Time has come and gone so fast, we're not who we used to be.
Welcome back to Sullivan's Unheard Voices. I'm here with Santiago. Santiago, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, that's no problem, man.
So I've heard you twice in two sort of like realms. One, your musical release of the single that you put out recently, but also with the amount of time you spent with Gemini Dragon, who is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah.
And so like I commend you on your musicality. And especially like with your single that you launched, you have sort of like this little Latin flavor that's behind the blues that you can sort of tell. And I'm just curious, like, how did you get involved in music in the first place?
Well, I started playing, well, I mean, I've always been around music. Music is like I grew up. My grandpa was one of my main music people in my life. He listened to a lot of Chuck Berry, listened to Fats Domino, Johnny Cash, Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn. Same thing with my grandma. You know, I was around uh, country and rock and roll growing up. And then it wasn't until in my later years, and it mostly, I mean, not to make it, I mean, I don't know, like how you run your podcast, but like, I don't want to make it super political, but like my grandpa was just like, he was only interested in white people music for the most part. So, which always baffled me when he would listen to, Fats Domino and Chuck Berry and stuff, but somehow that got by him. I don't understand, but it wasn't until later in life where he was out of the picture and he wasn't controlling all of our lives that I was actually able to get out and explore more stuff. And then started playing saxophone in middle school, and it just kind of bloomed from there. Had a lot of really great music teachers who they really encouraged me to explore what was really interesting to me, and eventually that just kind of brought me to playing out with my saxophone. Started sneaking into bars at a very young age, not to drink but to play music, and the rest was kind of history from there.
Do you remember the first saxophone you picked up?
Well, the first saxophone I picked up was it's kind of a old. It was well, actually, that the first saxophone, it was something that my mom's boyfriend had got me from a music store. But I mean, I played that from like the ages of like 12 to 20. My last saxophone was actually a Yamaha, and I had played it so much with no repairs that it was basically like unfixable. And so they this music store bought it off me to use it as scrap, and I had enough that I could get out of it that they let me have a guitar and amp. And so that's how I ended up moving from saxophone to guitar, and then took me about 5 years from there after playing to get out to my first jam session, and then 3 years after that my first band. And yeah.
So what was the transition like from saxophone to guitar? Was it easier than you thought, or was it like almost speaking a different language, if you will?
But it is speaking a different language because, you know, with saxophones, it's a lot more linear. I mean, it's like when you play in B flat versus A flat, you know, on the piano or the guitar, it shares a lot of the same keys, but when you're playing on saxophone, it's a completely different key set. And then on top of that, like, you know, if you're playing a E flat saxophone, like an alto, or a B flat, like a tenor, then you have its relationship to what they call concert pitch, which would be like your pianos, your flutes, your guitars. Its relationship is different. So like if I say I'm playing in B flat as a guitar player, you'd say the tenor saxes would play in C, whereas the altos would play in G. So,
And how do you keep all that straight with your ear, right? Because you're hearing a different note from the guitar and piano, and knowing that your note that you have to come out of the sax is sort of like a little under, right?
no, it's you get used to it after a while. I mean, it's like looking at I kind of look at it like it's like if you were looking at a table, and like in Spanish you would say la mesa, in French there's like, I think it's tableau or whatever, but then in English it's table. We're all looking at the same thing. It's just a different name for the same tone. Just concert pitch came about because the conductors would have to say like, oh well, you know, saxophones play this, trombones play that, violins play this. And so you would have to like call out the different notes. Whereas like when you switch to concert pitch, then you just say, oh, we're tuning or we're playing in whatever key. So it's gives it a more universality to it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like when you took the 5 years of playing guitar before you felt like you were stage ready.
Was not stage ready, but I was ready.
That's fair. And the reason I bring this up, because I'm always fascinated by guitarists, because I always want to know, like, at what point did you like figure like you're actually getting pretty good at this?
Well, the first time I really recognized that something was happening was actually after a really terrible breakup with a it was I don't know how risque I can get on the show, but
you can get as risque as you want.
All right, so back in the day, I was involved with a married woman where we were on and off for like 3 years, and I finally when I finally realized that it was never going to happen, I broke it off with her, and it was one of the most emotionally excruciating times of my life. I think for about 2 weeks, I just went to work, came home, drank, and fell asleep. And finally, my friend Brandy came over and like got me out of the bed and was like, "No, you need to go do something." And she wanted me to go out and play music, and and I was playing at this club, and I was in such a like a heartbroken state that I just told the band, like, I just want a slow blues in D, no, and straightforward. And I don't remember what I said I don't remember I don't remember everything of what I sang, but I remember how it felt and how the audience responded. And that's when I kind of realized something was happening. If I had these moments where I was kind of like out of body, it's like, wow, that kind of sounds like BB. Okay. I mean, rest in peace. Not that I would never, ever, because you're always going to be a second rate copy of whoever you love. Right. But it was just these really like interesting moments that I found myself in. So that's kind of when I figured something was going on, but, still very raw and, I don't know, unmolded, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but talk about your experience of that first time on stage, right? Because like one of the things I love is like the feeling you get that first time you're on stage, and you never capture the exact same feeling ever again.
Well, the first time I was on stage was playing saxophone, and that was really fun. That was when I was like 17, snuck into, I guess they're closed now, so I can say it. I snuck into Trails End. They just recently closed down, really
such a bummer.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I snuck into Trails End as a young 17-year-old and played saxophone there. It was amazing. They kept me there all night. It was crazy. But my first time playing guitar, I don't really remember my very first time, but I remember the first time I attempted to sing and play at the same time. And it was at a jam session at Trails End. And I was doing The Sky is Crying by Stevie Ray Vaughan. Well, it's originally Elmore James, then Albert King, then Stevie Ray Vaughan. But anyway, I was up there. I got through the first verse just fine. And I got to the second verse and my mind completely blanked. And then are we allowed to cuss?
Yeah.
I said, "Oh shit," because I forgot the lyrics, but I thought I said it in my head, but I actually said it into the microphone.
No.
And then I went to like slap my head, but I hit my head on the microphone and I knocked the microphone off the stage into the ground, and it just started feeding back, and it was squealing and loud, and the keyboard player played me out. I was like, "Oh, this is terrible. I'm so embarrassed, but I'm never gonna do it again." And I was so like, and then it took me about a week to like get over what I had done, and and I just kept coming back and just kept pushing. But that was probably the most memorable time playing on stage that I remember. One of my very first like formative experiences.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then then later on you make that transition into guitars. You're working on it 5 years. You get back on stage. Which band was that? Do you remember?
Well, I was just jamming with people at the time.
Okay.
My first band that I was a part of was with this band called Treble Hook out of Oregon City, and And I played with them for a while, and then I ended up getting kicked out of that. Well, I didn't get kicked out of the band, but I actually started my original band because me and the bass player had a little bit of a schism over a bass line. And him and I are still friends. He's one of my best friends, but at the time, it was just one of those things. And anyway, I got frustrated with him, so I started my own band. My very first band was called the Swamp Frogs, and we were just straight up blues for the most part. And but yeah, I love playing with treble hook. It was a lot of fun. It was a really great experience. And then going into my own first band, the Swamp Frogs, was amazing. I think we woodshedded about 40 to 50 hours our first month before we even hit our first official gig. And by that time, we could just look at each other and knew what we were gonna do. So it was a pretty spoiling experience for a first band. It was pretty amazing.
How important is it from a musician's perspective to have a band or bandmates that are supportive and sort of have that sort of feed into instead of sort of, you know what I mean?
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so like how important is it to have band members that are willing to work and compromise and give ideas? You know what I mean? Like, because you say you've been in the band where it's like everybody was like friends and you practiced well together, you knew each other's language. And I think it takes a kind of partnership between people in order for that to work, right? You know what I mean?
Well, I think that comes down to I think there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it in the monogamous sort of way, which is how we all kind of think bands go. But I would say that relationships in bands, and for the most part, have always been polyamorous, if you will, where like, we all are playing with somebody else for the most part, especially nowadays where people are feeling the economic squeeze. I have my own band, plus I'm playing with like three other bands, so it's more of a polyamorous thing. But like, you really just got to, I mean, it's really important to find people. I mean, I guess it just depends on what you're looking to do. Like if you're just looking to get out there and to just make money, like some people really don't care. But for me personally, I have a solid investment in the authenticity of the music. And so I want cats who are, I'm not going to work with cats who don't, at least, I don't know. I guess I can't say that 100 because there's some really great players out here who I don't really get along with politically, but I guess, sometimes you use who you use. But like for the most part, I really like to share the stage with people who share a lot of things that are important to me because I make my Chicano identity very, very prevalent. I'm very, when I'm not playing music, I'm very outspoken in the community. Especially with everything going on. And so like I don't make it easy in that way. Like if you know me, then you know what I'm about. And if you don't like it, then, you know. But that doesn't mean like I'm just like I'm like an asshole to everybody. I'm a firm believer in direct, clear communication and love and friendship that is based on a shared understanding of the world that we live.
100%. And that's one of the things that I love about music in general is that it doesn't care. Music is music. And if you're going to play music, you're allowed to have your own belief system. You're allowed to have your own sort of support structure. At the same time, though, I can't stress enough the importance of getting out there and like voices like yours, because you hear a lot of rhetoric about like this stuff's not really happening. But then I went to my coffee shop that I loved and adored, and the guy that owned the coffee shop was deported.
Yeah.
He had been here for 12 years.
Yep.
Built into this really successful business. He'd been paying taxes, doing
Yep.
all that, and then in the middle of the night, gone.
Well, but that's the thing though, man, is I'm a firm believer that anybody can play music, but I'm also a firm believer in that like music has clear origins and you cannot divorce the music from the, you can't take the music from the people. Like if you're talking about blues, it is unequivocally based in the oppression of enslaved Africans. When you talk about like boleros, you're talking about corridos. That is firmly rooted in Mexican and Chicano culture. And it doesn't mean that you can't play it, but it also means you got to learn those stories. You got to learn the culture that surrounds it, because some of that stuff won't make any damn sense to you if you don't understand. I tell people, it's like, imagine if you took Irish people out of Irish music.
100%.
And
Yeah.
it's like, because people want to make it like, oh, you just saying white people can't play music. It's like, no,
No.
man, I'm saying that, like, if you're gonna hang out in somebody's house, come through the front door. It's like recorded music has been a boon in the sense that, like, it is a way of like capturing a moment that we can study and analyze, sometimes even to death.
Yeah.
But then the bane is that, like, you have created a commodity that is separate from the person who created it. And so you can look at it as this moment in a vacuum, unconnected to a person. And so you can analyze it without any cultural or social context. And so you can pick up on something and do it an injustice by not like tracing it back to the root. So
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. And like music has memory.
Mhm.
And if
100%.
you're going to play a certain type of music and you don't know the historical context, I think it's going to show up in the music that you play,
Mhm.
because you don't have that emotional connection to the core of where this music come from.
Yeah.
Because most music comes from a place of adversity, overcoming situations. Music can't exist, I don't think, without emotion. I mean, it can,
Yeah.
but it's not the same.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's like all art is political. It's like when people say like, oh, blues isn't political. I'm like, well, I was gonna say, like, there is something that happened between 1619 and like the early 1865. There's something that happened in between there that happened to black folks. I'm not sure what it was, but maybe you can remember, and you just, and it's like, yeah, it has its roots in slavery, has its roots in colonialism. Like I said, it doesn't mean, I'm a Chicano. I love blues. I love blues. I love Latin music. I love Irish music. I love anything that has a particular flavor, but I'm also smart enough to know that, like, you can't really do any music justice, even the music of where you come from, without understanding the cultural context with when it was created. Like I said, it doesn't mean that you can't play it, but it means that you're missing out on a lot of important social cues that you will miss because you are not cluing yourself in. I mean, the music comes from a community. And so, like, do your best to like understand a community.
Yeah, and honor that
Yeah,
community as you
100%.
play. Yeah, because there's a huge difference between cultural awareness and cultural support
Yeah.
and cultural appropriation.
Oh yeah, it's like cultural appropriation is kind of like that idea I was talking about, where you take the music and you record it and you create this commodity that is separate from the person who created it. So it's like you think it's this toy that can like appease you, whereas like appreciation is like learning it from that culture. Like, I've had a really wonderful experience these last like 6 7 years of playing with a lot of the well, maybe not a lot, but like a handful of black churches in the area, where it's like something I would have never thought growing up, because I played in the churches I played in, it was like really like white churches, like four square churches were a lot of the ones that I played in. There's especially out in the Clackamas area, but these days it's been more of just, it's been a wonderful learning experience, building community, and just getting a better appreciation and understanding of the music that I already love. Because I mean, it comes from the church. Blues is just secular gospel. Because gospel is the music that most people talk about, that was born out of slavery. It's like, it's literally the birthing of musical joy, where like, because I always tell people, like, I have a hard time with church, but I love gospel music. And gospel music, and it's the sound of freedom. It's the sound of joy. It was like enslaved Africans, black folks, they were oppressed so hard and for so long that they literally were like, they gave birth to like this joy that you can hear it in every note in the old stuff. It moves it moves me in a way that very few types of music really do. And so Yeah.
Do you remember your first introduction into blues in general?
My first introduction was my buddy Josh Whitney Wise. I came over to his house after school one day, and he showed me the Blues Brothers. And so, I mean, and I'll say like Blues Brothers is R&B more than it is
Yeah.
blues, but like Sweet Home Chicago is probably like my first introduction into blues. But like later on, like where I've really felt like I really like met the blues for the first time was BB King. It was one of his live albums that I can't remember the name of, and it was something that really caught me. But then like this BB King album called Midnight Believer is the one that really hit me. It's a couple. There was another one called Take It Home. It was two CDs recorded like within a year of each other in like the early 70s, and it was basically BB King fronting the Jazz Crusaders.
Oh, how cool is that? I
Yeah.
didn't even know that exists.
Bro, you gotta find it. But you can look it up on YouTube though. Midnight Believer is the better of the two, in my opinion. But they're both really fun albums.
Yeah.
But the song in particular that always gets me is called Hold On. And it just there's this part towards the end where BB is singing the chorus, and it's like so like when BB King talked about Lucille, he always talked about her as like a second vocalist more than a rhythm guitar, but you really hear it in this tune where it's like there, because the whole premise of Hold On, the chorus, it goes, it's a hold on, I feel our love is changing, hold on, please don't let me disappear, hold on, there's no me without you here. And there's this part at the end where it feels like Lucille and BB are reaching for each other, but they can't quite get each other. And it's like Lucille is like she's crying, I've heard While My Guitar Gently Weeps like a million times, but it never moved me in that way that this exchange does between him and Lucille. And it's like the high point of the song before it really drops down and like builds back up to a kind of medium. But even just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. But that's probably where like I really felt the most touched by a blues tune.
And I also think I love to touch with musicians on like the feel of the audience as you perform.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you're on stage, how important is it for you to make that connection with your audience?
Oh, it's very important because music is a conversation. I mean, what would it be like to like have me and you sitting in front of a camera and it's literally just me going off while you are completely uninterested in whatever the fuck I gotta say. It's the same thing. And I think it's realizing that like it doesn't matter how popular you get as a musician, you are there for the audience. So if they're not responding to you, that means you gotta work, not them. You're not, you gotta make that connection. So yeah, it's probably one of the most important things. Yeah, so I put showmanship and connection with the audience at like high on the list of things that I do as a musician.
Yeah, because like one of the things that I enjoy as an audience member is when I love to watch the band on stage. And there's three things that bands do on stage that I will always geek out on.
Yeah.
It's the way they communicate with each other
Mhm.
without saying a word.
Mm-hmm.
Just like holding each other accountable as the music progresses. The second is watching them watch the crowd.
Yeah.
And I've seen some artists do this, and I would suspect you're probably one of the same kind of artists that do that. If you see somebody in the crowd who's not engaged, it kind of becomes your personal mission to find a way to get to that person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I always tell people, man, if you want to hear good musicianship, turn on a record. But when people go out, man, they want to see a show. They want to see something. They want to come back home and like, you will not believe what the fuck just happened tonight. That's the type of feeling you want to leave people with. And sometimes the craziest thing is sometimes it's not even something you intended to do. Because sometimes if you try to make it your personal mission to get somebody's attention, it's like sometimes you just come off like you're trying way too hard. But I look at it the other way, like people like I'm always dancing, I'm always moving, I'm always like even when I'm just like playing rhythm guitar and somebody else is soloing, like you won't see me standing still. I'm moving, I'm swaying, I'm hollering at them if it sounds good, it's especially like different types of tunes, like I really get in my bag when we're playing like Chicano rock or like cumbias or something, where like I just get to like let my indigenous side, feel my ancestors come out a little bit with a little scream, a little grito or something. But like, but it's like, that's, I feel like stuff. Cause like, if you're not feeling it, then what do you, I don't know. I used to work as a door to door salesman. And one of the things that I always remember, one of my van managers would say is like, the people at the door are only half as excited to be there as you are. So like, if you show up looking like a sad sack of shit, I really don't know what to tell you about them. But like, if you show up excited and somebody shows up like not super enthused, like all you got to do is just kind of be you and have fun. And I feel like most people get on board, especially if you get out there and dance with them a little bit. Like I get out on the dance floor with people and dance with them when I'm playing, or like I play behind the head, or like
Love that.
sometimes I'll roll around. I used to like roll around on the ground and play. People just love that. They want to see you they want to see somebody just lose their shit, So it's a good time.
Well, and those are the best memories, right? Like all of the concerts I remember, like right off the top of my head, were ones where something totally unexpected yet magical happened. And like,
Yeah.
how did you come up with that idea? Like, I didn't. It was in the moment.
Yeah, I remember I had something like that. There's a Monday night thing that happens over at Mekong Bistro. It's like it's Bayou Boys, and then they have like Tevis Hodge opening for them. And I went out there one night. It was probably about a year ago now. And I was playing with the band up there, and there's this part where like the end of the song came, and so like my amp head is my amp unit is completely separate from my speaker, so like my speaker can move around. Anyway, I threw my guitar on the ground and like was like kicking it, and then I picked up my speaker and held it over the guitar like this, and like got it to feedback, and the other guitar player was like, "Whoa!" And people in the crowd were just like, "Oh." And it was just funny. It just felt like his name is Jimmy Russell. He encapsulated. He's like, it's like we're all 13 years old jamming out to Jimi Hendrix or something, man. It was just one of those wild moments where he's like, I would have never thought to pick up my speaker and hold it over my guitar. That's crazy. I'm like, I don't know, man. It was just in the moment.
That's so awesome.
It just sometimes it's just a spark of like, it's just in the moment. You just gotta kind of lose yourself. It's like people look at musicians on stage and it's like they're so, it's like they try so hard to be cool that like they become frozen.
Yeah.
Whereas like being cool is like it's like my homie Xavier said, like he's like, I take the music seriously, I'll take myself seriously. So you got to kind of have like that. Yeah, you just got to kind of not be afraid to look silly,
100%. And it also allows the audience to be more engaged and silly. Like if the band is such that they have the opportunity, or they're presenting themselves as a way of like, we're not perfect, we're making great music.
Yeah.
Come out and dance. We don't expect you dancing perfect. We just want you to dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's always really fun when you see it happen. I mean, I played this car show over the summer with this other band I'm in called Latin Rock Exchange. And there was it's about halfway through the show, this chick came out on the dance floor. We're playing a Santana tune called Flor de Luna. And she was out there dancing, having a good time, but she was the only one out there. And so I jumped off stage and like got out there with her and was playing the song while like conducting the band kind of. And like, and we were tearing it up. And then after the song was over, the next song, you couldn't have pried people off the dance floor with the crowbar because they were there. And the DJ said, man, that's the first time anybody's danced here in like 3 years that he's been DJing, because first of all, they didn't really have any like danceable bands, but it was, but yeah, it was really special, to like be able to encourage people in that way, not by telling them, hey, get on the dance floor, but like, look, the water's warm, come in, nobody's going to bite you.
And it only takes one.
It only takes one.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. And so to all of you listening, and for everyone that I know, and I know like a lot of people in the blues scene that are the first ones on the stage, I commend you. Keep doing it. So one of the things I also love to ask musicians, because I think it's an important conversation, is on the venue side of things.
Mm.
Like, if you could talk to venues and say, if there was one thing that would help you as a musician, what would you say to venues?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I might get myself into trouble. I do a lot of musician advocacy, and honestly, it really comes down to compensation. And and part of it comes from the fact that, like, during the 80s, I mean, most stuff can be traced back to Reagan. That the reason why, but before Reagan came along, like, musicians were considered to be a part of the staff. But then after Reagan, like, we all became independent contractors, and so we're basically like throwaway. And it doesn't mean that we're not, like, it's just like, in terms of like how we're seen, we're not compensated in the way that we should be, because I mean, at the end of the day, like, you can't make music you can't make music if you're only making like like $50 for a 4-hour gig. You know what I mean? And so it makes it a lot harder, but I guess it's just pay. It's like I say, it's like you've got a beer vendor, you got a liquor vendor, you got your light bill, you got your water bill. It's like musicians need to be treated in the same way that you would consider other important bills.
And that's so important too, right? Because like I always geek out with numbers. And people always talk to me, well, what do you know about that? It's like, okay, if you're paying 4 hours for $150 for the entire band's only making like $5-6 an hour, and minimum wage is 15.
Yeah.
So basically, today most musicians are making less than minimum wage
Way less.
to rock out or provide you with this entertainment on stage, and relying solely on tips. It's almost like the days of like waitress wages, where
Well,
you allowed.
waitresses are still like that, man. Like,
Yeah.
on the East Coast.
Oh, I know, it's terrible.
Yeah.
$2 an hour and
Yep.
then tips. It's like, that's
Mhm.
not, like, it's not fair.
Yeah.
Especially like without musicians, there's no music to begin with.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we flipped it in a way.
Well, it's the devaluation of labor. I mean, not to get in my political bag, but like, I always use it's called exploitation, and it's not exploitation in the way that, like, you're being held at gunpoint to do something you don't want to do. It's the exploitation of wages, and I always tell, like, I use the Denny's example. So, like, as a fry cook, as a line cook at Denny's, you would make in a 10-hour shift. At $10 an hour, you would be making $200 before tips, before taxes. Now, in order to keep that job, you need to be making 31 plates an hour. And you figure, like, generously, like, each plate costs like $10. If my numbers are correct, you can correct me. But, like, so 31 plates an hour over 10 hours at $10 an hour. I mean, at $10 a plate, you're making the establishment is making like $3,000 by the end of your shift, and they're only paying you $200. And so that money that they don't pay you, that's what profit is. And it doesn't mean that these venues are necessarily going out of their way to be mean. It's just that's the way the system rewards people for being able to have a business. That's what that competition is. And so it's like, whoever exploits labor harder, whether they want to do it or not, are the ones that survive. And so it's understanding that the way that the system is set up, it makes it very difficult to be generous with people, which is why we need more unions, because unions are a way of collective bargaining, and they make it very difficult for musicians to do that. I mean, it's a crime, to the point where you could literally separate Prince and John Fogerty from their music as if they don't have like a claim on the music that they wrote.
100%. You see that all the time with musicians, where they
Yeah.
no longer have ownership of their own music.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
sad.
it is sad. It is sad, but it's you're just talking about how the industry has always worked, and so it's always looking at it from the place of like labor exploitation. Like I said, it's not outwardly evil. Like it's just it's almost like a way you would say like a I don't ever want to turn into like a natural disaster, but it's evil in the same way as like an earthquake is evil.
No, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just it's completely disembodied from like the interaction between venues and musicians. And it's this overhanging thing that could be changed with a lot more support. So I just say, like for musicians, like we're not flesh covered jukeboxes. At the end of the day, it's like we got, like me personally, I got a house, I got a kid, I got a car note. I gotta pay for gas. I gotta put clothes on. I gotta be able to feed myself. And for a lot of us, man. Well, I mean, it really should be all of us, but like $50 doesn't cover a whole lot.
It barely covers the gas these days.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. That $50 is, I mean, if I don't fill up at my favorite spot, $50 is definitely a taking it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's interesting because like the system itself is built to where the companies that exploit the most get rewarded the most.
Well,
And that's the part, like, I wish that we could find a way to sort of change the script on that.
well, see, then we start talking about the that's where you start talking about like socialism and this is a music podcast, so I don't know where you really want to go with that, but I would say that like it's like it's about taking, when you have like the concentration of wealth into like a handful of people, that's where the problem is. And it's not to say that like venues are out here making a shit ton of money, because I mean they're all struggling too, but it's like but that's where community comes in, because what I always tell people is like out here we don't really have like music community in the way people would think. It's like it's more like music settlements where like we're all sharing space, but we're not sharing resources. And the resources are important.
And it's almost like these pockets are sort of working against each other. And what I mean by pockets is like you don't get a lot of cross-genre efforts, right? Like the punk artists aren't working with the Chicano community. They're not working with the blues community. They're sort of like in their own microcosms.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We have I work with a group called we're the Musicians Guild, and we're based out of the local 99, and it's basically that's what we're trying to do is bring, like I play with another band called the Dan Kaufman Band, and he does like alt punk, alt country. And so I've been his main guitar player for a minute. And so like, and that's what I really wanted. That's what we're doing with, in that group, is we're bringing, he's more of like a punk country guy. And I'm like over here, like, like blues, smooth jazz, neo soul, funk, whatever. But we understand that like our collective survival I mean, it really behooves us to be able to cross those lines. I always say, man, I don't have to love you or like you to fight for you, because as musicians, we all share the same plight. Even if you vote in a way that cuts off your own legs, like we still have the same struggle. Yeah, so it's important to remember the struggle is first. I mean, it all comes back to labor. The people who work are the people who create the value. Without musicians, without the people who work in the factories, without the nurses, without anybody who does a job for labor creates value for wherever they work. So without us, they don't make money.
And one of the things that I've said ad nauseum on this podcast too is just how important that view is in the local music scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you can go out and spend $600 for a Taylor Swift ticket. No burden to Taylor. Congratulations. However, if you take that same money and go to 6 shows with local musicians, like you're going to have just as much fun. I would argue a little bit more, because I like the more intimate venues. Because like once you get to a certain side stage, the volume kills all of the tonality. And so like you have a choice. Do you like want to go for this sort of like video experience with kind of crappy music? Or do you want a local band or a local venue where the music is amazing? And every dollar you invest in your local community stays in your local community. If you invest in like a Walmart, for example, most of that money goes elsewhere.
Well, yeah, and that's what comes back. I mean, that's really what it comes back to is like, you gotta, but we also are not, we're not encouraged to see the value in local music. I mean, sometimes, a lot of times, like like we were talking about earlier, a lot of genres. I mean, I can't remember who said that like Sunday mornings were like the most segregated time of, were one of the most segregated places. But I would argue that music venues in that way too, like not just along music lines, but also along like lines of race. Like we don't have like a lot of like cross pollination in a lot of those communities because so many of them are so insular. I mean, I left the blues scene for like I left the blues scene for like 5 years because like I just got tired of the microaggressions and I just kind of forged my own path in the stuff that I was doing and have just recently come back within like the last 4. I was kind of brought back into it by a couple of friends of mine who play on the scene. And, it's something I experienced from the time I first started playing on the scene. It's just, and I get it, it's like we're not, we're not as progressive as we'd like to think we are, especially if you think about now. I mean, gosh, 27 was a long time ago for me. I'm 42 now. But, like when I was 17, like I was hearing a lot of these things that I continued to hear up until like almost 10 years ago. And I just got tired of it and stopped. And, and it's, I don't know. I don't want to get too far into it, but it's just, we really need a more, it's like if you're playing, especially when you're talking about playing blues, it's like, a lot of the blues scene out here is a lot of white folks who play, no shade on them. We have a lot of amazing blues players out here, but like, it's so disconnected from its roots that like some people think you can talk a certain way or act a certain way while you're playing black music. And it can be really hurtful. And so yeah,
Even if it's unintentional.
yeah, even if it's unintentional. Well, yeah, intent does not negate impact. I mean, it's like it's just it comes from a place of like miseducation or diseducation. I don't even, is diseducation a word? Like where
we'll make it one today.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good. It's like, it's like you as a person on the spectrum, like my daughter is, we're seeing if she's on the spectrum. It's like the things that people believe about people with autism, autistic folks without having a cursory glance. Like everybody thinks it's just like everybody rides the short bus. And I think it just comes from that place where it's like it's easier for them to be ignorant because they don't have to like grapple with anything.
And the only thing I would add to that conversation in general is because of the way that media is exploitive,
Yeah.
a lot of people base their assumptions of autism on shows like Love on the Spectrum. And that is such a narrowly defined aspect of autism that is curated by a bunch of producers who like, oh, he's disabled enough that he's going to persona. So it's basically making like people feel sorry for people who are struggling
Yeah.
instead of talking about or highlighting how we can help people not struggle so much. It's more of like, let's embrace your struggle, put it up for everyone to see. And this is what we're going to portray as that.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there. Like it's curated.
Yeah.
And I would say that, like in the curation process of the blues music, like it's a lot of, it's something that I hear from a lot of my musician friends from around the country. It really comes back to the blues societies where like, blues societies have removed a lot of like black influence from black music, where like people think that the blues is literally just like shuffles, where like, it's like black music has like, it's far more, well, it's like blue, it's like you're talking like people think of it as like, it's a staircase, because it's like the blues is like a moment in the black experience where like, it's like it eventually like moved on to funk, moved on to R&B, moved on to hip hop, and it's like, but all of those are encapsulated within the black experience, but they don't define it. But like a lot of blues societies, that's their connection to like blackness, but like or like they claim it is, but it's like, but when you look at who comes out to listen to it, it's very reflective of that. I have a friend of mine, Mercy Morganfield, who she said at one time, she said, black folks used to fuck to the blues, but now black folks don't fuck with the blues.
Interesting.
And it's but you can tell who is getting the message and who isn't by who shows up. And and especially like I made a conscious effort when I started at a certain point that like I want the people who originated the music to hear me and to hear what I'm doing and feel like I'm authentic in what I'm doing. And I don't know like where that is at yet necessarily, because I recognize that in a lot of spaces I'm still probably seen as a at least until I get my passport stamped, I'm still seen as an interloper because I'm not, because I'm not black. But like at the same time, like I'm there to be real and to be authentic. So if I have to take a couple shots to the chin, I'm cool, because at the end of the day, it's not about me. But I feel like when you talk about the curation, you're trying to make it about something that isn't about the a music or isn't about an experience, where you're trying to make it about money or marketability. And that's where we get into the conversation, which is why, bringing it back to Gemini Dragon, which is why Christian and I have hit it off so well, because we have that understanding with one another. He talks about blues being in his DNA, and he's talking about it being, blues is black. No black, no blues, no black, no blues. Like it's part and parcel of the experience. And that's why Gemini Dragon's music speaks to me so much, because the musical experiences for black folks, whether you're talking about on the motherland or in the diaspora, including here, are so varied and so amazing that you can have BB King, you can have BB King, you can have Prince, you can have Vernon Reed, you can have Lenny Kravitz, you can have Keb Mo, you can have Gary Clark Jr., and all of these experiences, whether they're different within different musics, they are still all a part of the same experience. And that's where I think a lot of stuff gets missed. Like you can't boil it down to one thing and just leave it there, because even blues is such an expressive genre that it's not just like what people think. It's not just the music of picking and grinning. It's not just the music of like the Chicago in like the late 40s, early 50s. It's got so much more depth, but you got to be willing to step outside of like what are considered those curated boundaries. Yeah.
And that's what I also, to go back to Gemini Dragon, is because not only do you talk about that, just how unique the sound of Gemini Dragon is,
Yeah.
while maintaining that sort of, I don't want to say baseline, but I don't know what a different word, but it's like that base level of like traditional blues.
Well, yeah, well that's what it is because like all of us, like I love the blues, but I wasn't raised on blues. I wasn't music that I heard most of my life. I mean, I was like like a lot of my, me and my Chicano brethren, man, a lot of us are into hip hop, like old, like, firme oldies, Santana, so like so you have a lot more, like I call it spices, in your spice rack. A lot of these cats with those curated boundaries, they all have about the same 4 or 5 spices on their spice rack. But like those of us are, like me, like Gemini Dragon, like we listen to a bunch of different things. So we bring those experiences to the music that we play, so we can still stay within the boundaries of what you might consider traditional, but like we bring more to it than just that. Like it's like it's like a if you don't it's like if you don't live it, it doesn't come out of your guitar.
100%.
Yeah.
And you can tell the difference on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's a lot of cats are really, especially like those curated boundary cats, like they don't play with effects very often. And so they always give you a hard time if you've got like more than like 3 or 4 pedals. And I tell people, man, like I like ambiance. The music that I like, it's not just it's like you want to create a mood, and so that's another thing, like, different musics, if you're going to play them, they require a different mood. And you can mix and match and play around, but like you got to understand like what the mood is and where, and that's where, you got to be willing to color with crayons and be rather than just like, like gray shading.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point too, because I know a lot of people that have playlists built around moods. where they have like a Spotify playlist of songs when they're feeling like crap. They have a Spotify playlist of songs when they're feeling good. And so like when you have that ability to have put mood in your music, more people will find it if they have that sort of need for that mood fill, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And too, it's like recognizing that, like, as things change, like things that, when you find new things, you want to adapt new things to it. It's like, like, I don't know, like I really like Teddy Riley and like the 80s, like I don't know what they call it, the New Jack Swing, really prominent in the 80s, but people were playing with it with old jazz tunes, because it was such a hit beat. And it's like, I almost like, that's what I love about Gemini Dragon, and what like I've really found in my expression of what I've been working with them on, is that like I'm able to kind of play around with those boundaries more, and not have to feel like I'm stuck in a certain place, that like I can bring all of my experience, and not just the experiences that make people comfortable.
And that freedom is so awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then tell us a little bit about how you created the song that you created by yourself.
Well, that song, I gotta give it up to Christian. He was the one who he gave me the outline. I asked him to help me with that one. I'm working on my 6-song EP right now with songs I have actually created myself. But he's like, here, man, here's what I envisioned for it. Now just do your thing.
Yeah.
And so he gave me a really beautiful canvas to paint upon. And so all I did was just put my flavor on it. And yeah, I mean, it's been a really great process. I mean, I'm really good at writing progressions, but like words have always been tough for me, even though like I don't know, like I don't know. So I'm working on that. Like I said, I've got 6 song coming out here soon, and I have written half of the 6, and then I will have Christian's gonna be like I'm gonna be like a co-writer with some of Christian's stuff he's handing me. But yeah, but it's been a really fun creative experience, because I've always been more of a cover guy, and I really appreciate that, because it's really helped me develop my style. But now, like, trying to find my voice, it's been a really wonderful experience, honestly. Like, just being a part of like the Project Blues book, and and just having him help produce me and get my voice out there. It's been a really amazing experience.
And so one of the things that I also love to talk to musicians is about the muse, because I do believe that the muse is like a living, breathing thing.
Mhm.
So how do you capture the muse when it visits you? Because you never know when it's going to strike.
I have a little recording device on my phone where I can like, if I like, sometimes I'll be in a conversation with something, I'll say something like, "Ooh, that sounds like something." So I'll record it, and then I'll come back to it later. Or sometimes I'll have a hard time sleeping, and I'll grab my guitar, and I'll just kind of play around with some stuff, and I'll record that on my little recording device. Or sometimes I call it musical bathing, where like sometimes I'll just listen to music that has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing. And then it just kind of breaks me out of my slump, and just lets me just kind of hear stuff. Like, I've got to, like, even though like I play a lot of like funk, soul, R&B, blues type stuff, I mean, I like heavy metal. I like Irish music. I played in some country bands here and there, so I like some country. So I like being able to just finding ways to just separate myself from the situation musically, and just kind of take my mind off of it, and see if something doesn't come later.
And then when you have that sort of like ideas, do they sort of come in like musical notes, or do you like sometimes get like lyrics that come to mind? Or like,
Sometimes it's music notes. More often than not, it's just like it's it's I don't know, with the songs I've been writing, the words came first, and then it's just been like through different iterations that I've finally found the voice for it, where like, because in the olden days when I was writing, I was trying to write specifically within those curated boundaries, and sometimes I would find moods or emotions that I just could not capture with that. But the way that I was brought up, playing in the scene with the people that I cut my teeth with, there was really nothing outside of that that could be offered until I started discovering like R&B, until I started discovering soul, and not just like this, like the Sam Cooke soul, or like the, or like some, like even like the early, like Al Green or Otis Redding. I'm talking like 60s and 70s, like Teddy Pendergrass, Al Wilson, the stuff that, like, where it really kind of, where you really got to that, like, it's, it's sexy time music. Let's make it real. And so, like, sometimes I'd have those moods, but I couldn't really capture them within necessarily like a slow grind, like a bad boy, or like even like a slow blues. Like, I wanted something that was more like, that had more expressive chords. And so, so like once I really started discovering that, it really allowed me to find more places where I could place those lyrics that felt more comfortable.
And then when you're in the recording process, do you like the idea of like recording things on separate tracks and sort of tracking them together? Or do you prefer to like have the whole band there and just try to record it as like a band?
This recording process, it's literally just me. So this process, I mean, I've got a drummer coming in to do drums because I can't do those to save my life. But I'm recording bass lines with my guitar, but I'm using like an octave pedal and a compression pedal
Oh, that's
to
awesome.
get a bass sound. And so I'm using that to get my bass. But what I do is I do a scratch track with, like, like my, just whatever I feel like the rhythm should be for the rhythm guitar, and then I'm singing, and then I go back and then I start placing all the other parts with it. So it's so, like, I start with bass, and then I go rhythm guitar, and then I'll do vocals, and then I'll do my lead tracks, because the lead guitar, the solo instrument, in a lot of ways, should just be like, it should be like a call and response.
Yeah.
So
Instead of like the whole song, it's just a piece or a highlight, a portion of the song.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's for me, it's music is a conversation. So that's where that's ends up how that's how it's ended up, where the process has gone for recording. It felt, that's where it's felt the most comfortable.
And then, so you've already released the one song.
Hmm.
And what did that feel like when you were able to finally sort of like push it out there?
It felt really good, honestly. Like, it's weird hearing myself. Like,
Oh,
and it's weird hearing myself a absent like something that I could use to gauge where I need to be. So, like, if I'm doing a BB King song, I know what BB King sounds like. I know what he did. So, like, I gauge what I'm doing with that. Or if I'm doing like an Aaron, like doing like a Neville Brothers tune. So, like, I can
yeah.
hear where Aaron Neville is. So, like, I judge myself based on where he's at. But doing this and basing it on, like, where am I? That was kind of like the trick for, like, finishing getting that out, because the way I said is, like, it's weird playing with yourself, like recording the vocals, and then, like, playing to your vocals and recognizing that these are supposed to be like, it's just, I don't know, it was kind of surreal. But actually hearing myself out there and the responses that I've gotten from it, like, I'm like terminally shy, and you would never guess that from how I conduct myself on stage. But, like, I'm very critical of myself, especially with how I want to sound, how I want to come across. And so, like, I always think worse of myself than I actually am, because, like, more often than not, people hear what I do and they're like, "Man, that's so amazing." And I'd sit here thinking like, "Whoa, I got a lot of work to do, but I'm glad you think it sounds good." But I'm being learning how to be more gracious, and just really just being in the moment. I think that's been kind of like the motto this last year for me, is like, stop worrying about, like, what you've done before, and stop worrying about what you think everybody's going to think in the future, and just be here in the moment and just experience it. And I think that's where especially with this with my 6-song EP that I'm working on right now. I think that's I just went into the studio for the first time to record it on this last Wednesday, and this past Wednesday, and it's my goal is to get it done by the 10th of January, which is my birthday. But it's just being in there in that moment, and rather than like kicking myself like I did for my single, just really just trying to focus on being there and not worrying about what I'm going to sound like to other people, and just worrying about like, how do I sound to me, and just being okay with that. Yeah.
And I chuckle a little bit because like I can't listen to my own podcasts because like I am so hypercritical of myself, right?
Yeah.
Like we are our own worst critics, and like you, people always tell me like, oh man, you're amazing, you do these amazing interviews, and I'm like, oh, I can only imagine how awesome it would be if I could always get the cameras to work.
Well,
It's like, but it's at the same time that you have to respect the art piece of it, because like, where else are you having these conversations?
that's what I'm saying, man. Like it's funny because like I do like political talk radio on KBOO, and so I have a hard time hearing myself too. But at the same time, it's like, it's just it's fun. I mean, it's like, I don't mean to like, I guess maybe like politics isn't fun for everybody, but like, but it's like there's this certain aspect of it, like even if you're doing something serious, like there has to be an element of joy in it. And really focusing on that joy though, I mean, because I've heard your other podcasts, man, and it's great. I mean, I got this homie, he goes by Catfish, and he does the Cat Blues Hour out of LA, and he's done some amazing interviews too. And it's like, it's like he talks about the same things, and it's like, you just gotta just learn to enjoy being in the moment and just taking it for what it is.
100%. And the reason I started this podcast is because I listened to an interview and I won't disclose the musician's or the interviewer's name, but they were interviewing a musician, and they spent 25 minutes talking to this world famous musician about their relationship status. And I'm like, I don't want to know your relationship status. Like, I love your music. Why can't we allow musicians to have their private lives private
Yeah.
and just appreciate the music?
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to have a spot that I sort of talk about music in general. And then we've been at this for over an hour, so I want to like turn it back to the music to sort of end our conversation.
Gotcha.
Because one of the things that I'm curious about as you move into next year, uh, is there something about Portland that sort of keeps you here as a musician?
I mean, what keeps me in Portland? I mean, what keeps me in Portland, honestly, is just the relationships that I've created with the people that I care about. I mean, like I said, I stepped off the scene for about like 5 years because I just, there's a part of me that just did not want to be involved in the microaggressions anymore, and and because I had only cut my teeth in one scene, that I thought that's all there was. And so when I forged out on my own, and I created relationships with people who are in the area and who like my music but aren't necessarily part of the music scene. And so, but creating those relationships and building my music up in a back channel that has nothing to do with that has really allowed me to feel like more of a fixture in the groups, in the places that I play. And I mean, honestly, it's the relationships. I mean, I love, I mean, Portland, I mean, I've lived in Portland since I was 12. I probably played my saxophone on every street corner before I was 16, just trying to make money. And so like I'm pretty know Portland pretty well. And I mean, in especially when you talk about like, I mean, the politics are going to be what they're going to be. And and while I've never really been happy with like Portland's politics all the way around, like I've really just loved the people that have mentored me as a musician and as a person. And really, and coming from a family where we moved every 2 or 3 years, it's been a really great experience, like really building roots in a place and just really just having a place to call home, even if it isn't perfect a lot of the time. It's home, you know?
Yeah, I had a professor once who taught political science,
Yeah.
and he said the most profound thing to me once. And he's like, the United States government is the worst form of government unless you compare it to all of the other forms of government out there. And so it's not perfect. And there are a lot of bumps and there are a lot of messiness when it comes to our politics. And at the same time, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Like, I love it here.
Yeah.
And so, like, do I wish and long for a day when politicians listen to the people? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll ever happen,
Mm-hmm.
but I would love that.
Yeah. Well, I think any place that I think I think we have a we kind of understand like our relationships, through our form of government. Like we look at everything as consumers. And so like when the consumption becomes such that like you don't want to deal with it, like the idea that like we just kind of toss it away. And I think that like more than anything, like for me, it's like anything that you love is worth trying to change to make better. And so like that's why I'm a part of this musician advocacy group I've been a part of for a while now. That's, like being on the scene and just being myself and doing what I do has it's given me, I don't know, I find a renewed sense of purpose, not only in my music, but in my life, just trying to because for me, music. There's this really great quote by Ali Akbar Khan. He was a Sufi musician that used to, he might have passed away by now, but he lived in the Bay Area. But anyway, it said, real music is not for wealth, not for honors or even joys of the mind, but a path to self-realization and salvation. And for me, that's where music has brought me. It's like the music that I do is about like helping me to make myself the most self-realized that I can be in this moment. Like if the music isn't helping me to open myself and to like be a more fully realized version of myself, then then I don't want to do it. And whether that makes me money or it doesn't, because sometimes making real decisions cost you something. I don't know, like the notes I play now, I play for love. And whether that gets me money or not is can be up in the air, but like that's where it is for me right now. Is like I want the love is what lasts. It's like that I probably spent way more money throughout my life than I probably should have on any one thing, but I never regret it if the love is there. And yeah, so that's why that's what means more to me than anything else, especially for like, my daughter, like I want her to have solid roots, which is another reason why, I don't really want to move, because I don't want her to experience the feeling of moving all the time, so whatever I got to do to make it happen.
Yeah, because that's rough, right? Because, like, I remember moving 6 months before graduating high school,
Oof.
and that's not even enough time to make any real friendships. And so, like, I
Mm-mm.
remember graduating without a single friend,
Ooh, that's
and
rough.
it was rough. And so, like, I commend you for making that decision
Yeah.
because, like, sometimes you have to sacrifice to make sure that your kids have the best opportunity as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what it is, man. Like I don't know. I mean, is Portland the best musical place for an opportunity? That's up for debate, but I'm not willing to, I don't know. It's like there might be some places that might have a better thing or whatever, but it's like I just, for me, I'm willing to stick it out and willing to, because other people have done it before me, so I know it can be done. But I just, at the end of the day, it's not really about me. It's about people that I love and people that I care about, the people who make me, because there's no me without them. And so if I leave them, then I'm leaving a huge part of me somewhere. And it's the community. So
Yeah, it's just in music itself is one of those interesting things that uh it needs the collective in order for it to live.
yeah.
Like it's one of those things where yes, you can have an artist that's just himself and a guitar singing on stage,
Mm-hmm.
but the miracle of having a 4-piece band, a 5-piece band, where you have 5 people, independent thoughts, independent motion, but yet they get on stage and for that 4 minutes, they're in complete unison.
Yeah.
And I look at that as a miracle every single time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a great band is it's greater than the sum of its parts. Like if you have like 5 stellar superstar musicians up there who are not interested in the slightest in hearing one another, then the music ultimately sounds like they're not listening to each other. But if you've got some like 5 or 6 round the way musicians who really dig each other's vibe and they play together, like they can make something really amazing. And it doesn't, and it's like, and they're not even, you would even consider them on the same level as like these 5 like superstar musicians. But it's like at the end of the day, no matter how much money you've made, it's about like, it's about like being there for the audience and ultimately like wanting to create something for them. And if you're willing to do that, then you're willing to listen to other people. The people you bring on with you, I always say, like, I always look for cats who are better than me because, it's like, you want the best out there. And sometimes that means that like, you're not the best person on stage, but people still come to hear you and hear you play. But it's about having that mindset of wanting to create like the best music possible. So,
And one of the things that I love is when you're at a concert and then somebody in the crowd is from a different band or a different blues or a different whatever, and they're like, hey, come up on stage and play with us for a song.
yeah,
Like that is just like to me, like that only happens on the local level in mass. You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so like, and the reason I bring it up is because I want people listening to know like not only how important it is to come to local shows, how much freaking fun you're gonna have
Yeah,
when you come to local shows.
absolutely. I
Like
agree.
huge, like even at the bare minimum, like the level of attention and detail that your ears can get from a local venue is gonna be I like hands down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right about
Mhm.
that. I mean, it's there we have so many great world famous musicians here in Portland that I don't think get really like we don't really give it enough we don't really give it enough like attention and honor. I mean, the caliber of musicians you can hear on any given night here in Portland is absolutely amazing. And really it's like, but once again, it just comes back to like, like you said, where are we going to invest our money? The reason why we have like these large music venues, like cropping their way in here is because we as a community need to figure out how to like stand together. And part of that is like that cross pollination you were talking about, like being able to see the value in other music, like not just the one that makes us money, but the one that makes other people money. Because ultimately, whether we play blues, whether we play metal, whether we play punk, whether we play country, we all have the same, we all have the same needs, and we should all find ways to like be there for one another to be able to make that kind of like solidarity within the musician community happen.
Because like at the end of the day, the reality is the more you help people at the bottom, the better our society is in general. If everybody has the opportunity to have their needs met, to have a place to live, to have access to food, if we just had that as a bare minimum, everybody would be better off.
Yeah, well, and it's yeah, absolutely. It's about creating an ability to so like because like no musician who is a top 40 musician started as a top 40 musician. Like they all had to make their way through the circuit of like open mics, jam sessions, small shows, medium shows, large shows. And that's where the community comes in, because like we need to be able to have that type of like infrastructure to take people and mold them from the open mic to the big stage. And we don't have that out here, mostly because we're such a competitive, I mean, in a lot of ways, we're not that different from like Nashville or New Orleans, where we have such a saturated music scene that it makes it impossible for small artists to really get a footing, because if they don't want to play, there's a bunch of people who are, it's like if somebody asks for like $150 and they don't get it, they can walk away and the venues will just find somebody who's willing to play for like a pizza and a pitcher of beer and $50. But it's like you, in the short term, you might be making some money on it, but in the long term, because it's an investment, and if you're not seeing, the talent in your community as an investment for the future, then you're only you're gonna kill yourself on those short-term games.
And people get so short-sighted on the short-term games that they're not playing the long ball, and they're not playing like that high out there, because like the more you invest in that local talent and keep them as opportunities, the more we can keep this thing going. And my fear has always been, at some point, it's not going to be enough for somebody to play music, and we're going to miss out on somebody amazing because they don't have the opportunity to support themselves in music.
Well, and that's happened to more people than I can think of. There's a bunch of people I've played with over the years. I mean, one of my favorite harmonica players here in town, I haven't seen him play in years, because he went and got his doctorate. And so he's a doctor now, but he doesn't play because he understood that it wasn't a winning game. And this is probably one of the most, I mean, I think he was based in Baltimore before he came out here. And so this is a real bad motherfucker on the harmonica. I mean, it was like, he was one of the cats that was out there like before Paul DeLay passed away, and could like cop him like almost note for note. But it's about like what you're willing to invest in. Like you said, these short-term gains are great in a economy that is essentially like, it's not doing so great. But like the thing is like we're going to lose all that if we don't have, and it's not really just, like I said, it's about creating an infrastructure where we're investing in new talent, because like one day I'm going to be too old to play. We're seeing a lot of musicians who are getting too old, and they're cycling out, and there's nobody to replace them, because once again, and like I said, the venues aren't bad. It's just that like they're not incentivized to invest. But ultimately, investment is where it's going to be, because it's not going to pay, especially in an economy that's struggling. It's not going to pay. It's not going to pay you back right now. But like 5, 6, 7 years down the road, once things start to get better and things improve, and all of a sudden you have a need for people to come in and play, if you weren't investing in anybody in the hard times, then there's not going to be anybody here in the good times.
Or that what you invest in the good times is not up to I don't know, the level of professionalism isn't going to be there, because you haven't afforded them the practice opportunity or the opportunity to reach a certain level.
Yeah.
Because music, I can only think of like 2 or 3 people in my life that I've ever met that were amazing, and it only took them 6 months to get there.
Yeah.
Like it takes a lot of work and a lot of practice to become a proficient musician.
100%.
And that requires stage time.
It requires stage time, but it also requires like people say support live music, and there ain't nothing wrong with saying that, but I'm like, say, let's support the whole musician. Like we were saying before, like $50 for 4 hours ain't gonna cut it. And especially when you're talking about like what it actually takes, especially with inflation, like what it takes to like really like support a person. It isn't, I mean, even some of the higher paying venues still not really cutting it, especially if you want to have like a really thriving music community. I mean, you starve people on any level, it cuts the quality of what comes out of it. It's like you see, it's like, it's almost like like somebody who's malnourished,
Yeah.
like they don't develop properly because they don't have the nutrients they need early on in order to grow their body. So even as they grow, it still looks wonky because they didn't get the investment in nutrients that they needed. It's the same thing with musicians. Like if we don't get, whether you're talking about food, clothing, housing, all those people need to think about like where that comes from in terms of pay. It's not going to come from, it's just changing the outlook. Like I said, treating us as like flesh covered jukeboxes as opposed to like living, breathing, whole human beings that have lives outside of what we do on stage is that in the way that you perceive those two things is how, and like which one you're really willing to invest in really brings back what you hear in the music scene. And for the most part, over my long time, man, and it really isn't saying a whole lot. I mean, I'm only 42, but like when you only invest in musicians as flesh covered jukeboxes, it's eventually just what you get
That's
back.
what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're not paying musicians enough to even pay for their own strings, you're not paying the musicians enough.
Yeah.
Like, let alone paying for a guitar, paying for the drums, you're not paying musicians enough to pay for their own damn strings.
Yeah.
And if you are enjoying live music and you're out, please, I can't beg you enough, tip the band.
Yeah.
Like, you're spending $150 on alcohol. Take $10 off and throw it in the bucket.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, we need every little bit we can get, and it's yeah, and I mean it just comes down to like, it's we had a yeah, you just get out there and just bring, oh geez, I'm sorry. Just get out there and bring your money and have a good time and we'll show it back to you for sure.
But at the same time, though, like, I do want to make this clear, and I'm going to guess that you're going to agree with me, right? Because if you were to ask 100% of musicians, would you rather have a tip bucket or get paid enough to where you didn't need a tip bucket? They would 100% say, I want to get paid enough to where I don't need a tip bucket.
Yeah.
Like, instead of like us relying on tips, like just pay us enough so that we don't need tips.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, tips are nice, but it's like living on the generosity of people who are probably in the same tax bracket
Yeah.
as you are is kind of wild, but I mean, that's kind of the mindset that we're taught to have. It's I'm you we can't, it's like there's people with money who don't want to give it up, and we just gotta, it's I don't know. It's really complicated because like like I say, even the people who are in the venues, a lot of these are like small family businesses. So like, the money that they're not making money necessarily always off the labor of others because they still have to invest theirs. But like at the end of the day, like we can't be expecting the people who are in the same tax bracket as us to be generous with us to be the way that we make all of our money. Like I always appreciate it when people give me tips. I'll call it out over the mic. Like, thank you so much. It's wonderful. But like, we should really be getting paid. I mean, I think a lot of us are getting paid what musicians got paid in like the 70s and 80s when the dollar went a lot further. And, it's like I think it's like productivity is up 70% since like 1980. But like, but the rate of the way that that the wages have kept up with inflation has only gone up 12% in the same amount of time. And it's if that. And so like we can't, so like expecting us to like to live in the 2020s on 1970s is, living in the past in your mind doesn't work, let alone like in your pocketbook. So yeah, no, it's your music to me is multifaceted. I mean, it's not just the music, but it's like it's the things that wrap around the music. Because I mean, nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything, it's like everything is connected to everything else. And so like as things as people continue to feel the pinch around us, I mean, we as musicians are going to feel that pinch too. So whatever, whatever all of us can do to come together to support each other and to really build a community, not just like settlements where we're sharing space, but like where we're really sharing resources with each other. Cause that's the only thing that ever gets anybody through we're coming into some tough times, like historically tough times. And the only way that people get through it, whether you're a musician or just a person in the community, is just being able to come together and being willing to share the little bit that you have to make it so everybody gets what they need, even if it doesn't leave us living high on the hog.
Well, and this whole idea or concept of rugged individualism is not real.
No, it is not.
Like, and then when you hear things like that from people, and it's like, okay, I'm glad you built your own truck. I'm glad you built your own house. Oh, wait, you didn't. 40 other people built your house. 150 people were involved in the process of your truck. We live in a collective, and
Yeah.
there's no way of getting around that. And until we can sort of work together as a collective, we're going to keep seeing the same sort of things repeat itself, because we're not appreciating what we have on a micro level.
Yeah.
Because like what's going to work in this corner of Portland isn't going to work in Salem. It's not going to work in Roseburg.
Nope.
Each community has different needs, different requirements. And instead of trying to have this one size all fix to what's going on, if we could rally together and say, oh crap, we only have like 4 places to shop in this little micro community, and none of them have access to, like, you're on a food desert. So like their need or access to high quality, cheap food is going to be different than another need who's like, well, we have no place for people to live.
Yeah.
And so it's not investing equally, instead of investing on what the community needs to lift everybody up.
Yeah. Well, and that's where it comes. Like, you talk about like wealth inequality, that's where the exploitation of labor comes in, because all that money that's being taken from, like laborers, whether you're a musician or a fruit picker or something, the reason why they pay you so little, or you're being encouraged to pay so little, is because like there's people who need to make that money. That when people talk about profits, that's just unpaid wages.
Yeah.
And so like when those unpaid wages go to some place that isn't in the community, that's starving the community of its resources. So that's why, I mean, even when you talk about like rugged individualism, like you said, it's a collective thing. So if we're gonna make it better and we want to see it better, then that means we got to take the wealth from those who exploit it from us and be able to spread it out amongst those who need it. The people who work, the people who are just in the community just trying to exist. Those are the people who are the ones who need it, not the folks who are hanging on to like more than they'll ever be able to spend in a lifetime.
And when you see a news report that says that UPS is laying off 48,000 people, and then on the same week you get a report saying that all of the executives are getting a bonus of $229,000
Yep.
on average. So you're decimating the lives of 58,000 people, and you're rewarding that decimation of lives with a huge bonus to like 14, 15 people.
Yep.
Like, that's not fair.
I agree, man. No, you're preaching, man.
Yeah.
And that's what and it's funny because that's the type of ethos in which the starving artist is born.
Yeah.
Because because they want to, because the people will say, oh, the suffering makes the art better. But I would argue that the people that if you were to talk to some of those wonderful those artists, whether you're talking about musicians, painters, sculptors, whatever, if you were to ask them, like, what, if they really wanted to suffer in order to create art, I guarantee you they'd say no. I mean, you might catch like Janis Joplin, like she was one of those cats who was like, she perpetually wanted to be in pain because she thought it made her music better.
Or like Lana Del Rey, she's on record saying that same thing. Like, she can't be happy and make music.
Yeah, and but those are the outliers. But for the most part, most musicians, most of the ones that I've really like come to love over the years before I even figured out my own personal politics, that you realize they're just like they're just regular people who are just, they're doing something that they love, and they do it because it makes them happy, and hopefully they can make some money. But if you really ask them, man, it's like they don't want to starve, they don't want to suffer, they don't want to struggle in a way that is like makes their existence, like that has their existence on the line. Like it's one thing to struggle with like walking up like 14 hills because you want to like get in shape or something, because you can stop if you need to take a breather. But if you're trying to walk up those same 14 hills and there's somebody behind you with like a sharp stick, and if you stop, they're going to run you through with it. That's the type of struggle that a lot of artists go through, especially, I mean, I know me personally, like, it's like, people like I'm working, like I'm playing in 3 bands. I'm working a full-time job. I'm a dad. I'm doing all these different things. And it's like, people are like, oh, when do you rest? I'm like, never. When I'm dead. It's like, because if you want to, because especially like I can't stop, I mean, mostly because I want my daughter to see me doing something that makes me happy, because music has always made me happy, but also because like I can't,
Yeah.
It's like I'm not making enough in my regular job, and I'm certainly not enough making it as a musician, but between the both of them, doing pretty good. So I really, so I got to be strategic about where I stop, how long I stop. But yeah, man, it's like, but it's that ethos where the starving artist is born out of, where you create so much adversity that it's like you just, it's like, and then expecting people like, oh, he's going to overcome it, it's going to be great. And it's like,
maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not betting against myself, but I'm also well aware of the odds. So we'll see, but but that's what I mean. Like, so when I bring people into my band, like I have clear communication and a love and camaraderie that is built in a clear understanding of the world that we live.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about that, I'm talking about like politics. I'm talking about all that stuff, because at the end of the day, like, if we're not living in the same reality, I don't know how we're going to make music together.
100%. And the only thing I would add to that too is life is struggle to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? You struggle with relationships, you struggle with death, you struggle with all of these things. That's life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Food struggling and financial struggling should not be a part of that struggle.
Absolutely.
There are so many other struggles to pull from. Famine should not be one.
That's what I'm saying, man. It's yeah, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that because they don't want to come off as like whining or like crying about their circumstances. I mean, you'd see me on the camera, I'm not crying, but like, it's just like, you got to be real about it though. And most of these cats don't want to be real. They want to, they don't want to talk about these things because it's because it's like, oh, well, talking about that makes people feel bad. It's like, man, I'd rather people feel bad than like feel dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, if we're not all living if we all don't have like a clear, I mean, it's like, because like you're talking about living in the collective, it's hard to be in a collective when you live around people who are not firmly rooted in reality. And that's, and that's where that comes in. It's like, it's hard to create that collective mindset where we're all working together and sharing with each other if like some of the cats you're around, man, they're not even living in reality.
100%. And it's like, and I hear this all the time, like outside of the podcast realm. One of the things I sort of, as an example of something that's real that people don't talk about, I live in a predominantly Hispanic community.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved into this community, I was like, where is everybody? Because normally in a Hispanic community, you see people out, they're communicating, kids are playing on the street. They're hiding right now. Mm-hmm. They are not coming out of their houses.
Yep.
Because they're afraid. Like, I know, like my neighbor, like they have this ritual every weekend where they get together and enjoy music and enjoy like community. But they hang out in the garage with the door closed because it's not safe to be even out on the driveway.
Nope.
But people act as if that's not happening.
Yep.
And they're citizens of this damn country.
Well,
So it's not even that they're here illegally. It's like, no, they were born here, they're citizens, but they still have to go through this crap.
well, but that once again, we got to talk about being, we got to be talking about firmly being rooted in reality. What's happening right now? This is probably like the third time in American history that this has happened. You know, they used to call it repatriation back in the day. When they pick up our people at food markets and load us onto a train and send us back to Mexico. Like but it's like, but it all gets covered up in the idea that we live in a that we, because people like to call America like this great democratic experiment, and it's like, but if you read the writings of the founding fathers, man, they saw this as like their white Shangri-La, man. They were coming over here because because like literally what happened in Europe is the enclosures happened, and then the speculation on property went up, the pricing speculators, and basically it made it so people could not afford to live in the communities which they live. I mean, does that not sound familiar?
Mhm.
And so when they were pressed with the choice of fighting the people who were pricing them out of the place to live, or going to the new world where the red man lived and staking their claim there, a lot of those cats sold everything they had to hop on a wooden boat to go across the ocean to genocide people they didn't even know in order to make a living for themselves. And right now we are at that precipice. We could fight the powers that are making it impossible for us to live right now, or we can go bomb people in boats in Venezuela.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
but it's having an accurate reading of history that involves the stuff that makes you uncomfortable, like the 16, what they call it, like the American patriotic education. They want to educate these kids on stuff that, that makes them feel good about their country, but like not understanding that this is first and foremost a settler colonial project that built it, that stole it from indigenous people and used black people to build it. Like, if you don't even have that cursory understanding, then you're just gonna keep slamming your head into a wall to prove there's no wall.
And if anyone has to sit there and argue against what you just said, I have one word: 3/5.
3/5.
It's in the frickin' Constitution, folks.
For
It's
real.
in the founding documents. Treating people as 3/5 of a human being.
Yep, 100%, man. And that's the thing, is it's like, if we don't have that accurate reading of history, and then that informs every single decision that we make, even down to the way that we perceive the music that we play. So if you don't understand that, like, music comes from that idea that black folks were not considered whole. I mean, you could even argue now that they're not considered whole people. But like, if the music is rooted in that, and if you want to live your life in a way that doesn't see color, then you're not going to get any of that stuff. And you're the way you play the music is going to sound the way you think about the people who originated the music. And yeah, man, but I mean, it just comes from it's all connected. I mean, and people think that that's like, oh, it's saying it's like, it's because people don't want to think about it. It makes it really hard to enjoy how do I say it? So Martin Luther King had this quote that he said during the "I Have a Dream" speech, where he talked about a stone of hope being hewn from a mountain of despair. And, blues music is a stone of hope. It's that the gospel is a stone of hope. Soul food is a stone of hope. We're just talking about the things that black people have added to this culture. But people forget that there was a mountain of despair with which it was hewn from. And that mountain of despair, it's white supremacy, it's settler colonialism, it's Jim Crow laws, it's redlining, it's police brutality.
It's Tuskegee of frickin' experiments.
Yeah, 100%. And if you don't acknowledge that mountain, then all you're doing is playing marbles with the sacred stones of hope. And that's what a lot of cats sound like when they don't understand that relationship, because it just sounds like they're playing marbles when they're playing marbles with sacred orbs.
Yeah.
And that's where I've always attempted to take the way that I present, even if I'm playing blues music, of which I am not a black person, but like but those orbs are sacred to me nonetheless, even if they don't belong to me.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to be black to play. You just have to know where it comes from
And yeah,
and pay homage to the people that paved your way to be able to play this music.
yeah, I mean, the first true Chicano musicians were the first. Well, I mean, technically three or four. We'll just go there. There was a Lalo Guerrero, who was like one of the first Chicano musicians to come on the scene, and he played with a lot of black folks because he came up through L.A. And then after that, there was Manuel Donley, who was definitely more on the Tejano side of stuff, but was still an amazing guitar player. And then you also have like the double threat of Richie Valens and Freddie Fender, who were contemporaries of one another. And these are two cats who came up playing rock and roll. Freddie Fender ended up more country than anything else, even though he could still play it. But it's understanding that like they interacted, they interacted with black folks. We have this symbiotic relationship that pops up everywhere in history, but nobody talks about it because so many of my people have sold themselves out to a white supremacist power structure that only see for generations as Chicanos, as indigenous people, we have been encouraged more often than not to check that white box and to shed politically our skin color at the expense of ourselves and others around us. And and ultimately it's Stockholm syndrome. We're identifying with our political abusers, man, and it comes through in the music. I mean, like, if you're not living that truth of like what this country has done to us, I mean, it doesn't mean you have, like, I was listening to BB King talking about the first time he saw a young boy get lynched, but you would never hear him like in like conversation in a lot of his shows, man. You would never hear him necessarily talking about it, but that was always on his mind. And so like that way that he never lost sight of that truth, even if he continued to bring joy to people. But people think that you have to ignore the brutality in order to bring joy, but that joy has no real roots if you don't acknowledge the oppression. And that's why, once again, when it comes to the music, if we're not acknowledging the oppression that created the music that we play, then we're missing a whole huge part of the joy that there is to be had, because we can't ignore it.
And the thing I would add to that too is people like talk as if that was like a really long time ago. That's less than a generation ago.
That's living memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, there's somebody on video,
Yeah.
like in the time of television, that has seen a lynching in real life.
Yeah.
And like, it's not that long ago, folks.
Yeah. They made postcards about it, man. There's postcards people used to get together for. They would have special services at their churches just to see brothers getting lynched.
Mm-hmm.
And it's living memory for a lot of people.
Oh
my gosh.
AI is listening to us.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, and that's the thing, man, is it's and there's whole black towns that are sitting at the bottom of man-made lakes right now that you can find on Google Maps, because when they cleared the black folks out of there, they just filled it in and made a lake. There's an opening to a movie that had one where they were swimming around in the town. Like, I think it was like Lake Lanier is one of them.
Wow.
Because because people talk about Tulsa as if it was like the only black town that did something. There was dozens of them, and they all met the same fate. Because it's the idea, because those same people who preach rugged individualism will cut the legs off of anybody they don't like doing better than they are. And it's that competition that we don't need to have, because a lot of those folks who are cutting the legs off of other working folks, they weren't making any more money than they were. they just didn't like seeing Black folks doing better, and it's just it's really sad, and it's that same mentality that comes into music. Like, we don't need music competitions, because music isn't a competition. Music is love, and love is abundant, and sometimes, like, there's just something, like, I've never been, I don't compete with other people. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see nobody, there is no other me. Just like there is no other you, just like there is no other person who is listening to this podcast. You are literally your own person. Your voice is unique among others, and there's somebody waiting to hear it. Just like there's somebody who is waiting for you and somebody who's waiting for me. But we got to get past, like, this idea that we're in competition with the person next to us. If anything, we're on the same level, and we need to help each other. And that unhealthy level of competition is what leads to, like, this whole idea that, like, we have whole communities of people suffering because people want to compete, because we're encouraged to compete, because we're taught that there's not enough to go around, when there absolutely is. It's the people who are holding on to it who are telling us that there isn't enough to go around. It's the people who don't want to lose it's the Scrooge McDucks that don't want to lose their vault of gold coins who are telling you there isn't enough to go around. It's absolutely insane.
People act like $60,000 a year jobs are just readily available for the plucking. 1,600 people applied for a job that I knew about recently. 1,600 people.
Yep.
And, like, I would imagine most of them are begging or pleading and trying to get to a decent living wage. And the number of jobs that are living wage jobs are far few in between, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. There's
Yeah.
plenty to go around. It's just, that oh my gosh. How much longer do we have on this podcast, bro? Because
I'd say about like 15 minutes, and then we got to wrap it up. Yeah, we've been at it for an hour and 44. But I'm having so much fun. I'm like, let's go. Like, this is awesome. Like,
well, I mean, it just comes back to the whole idea of socialism. Because people know we've lived under an 80-year, we've lived under 80 years of a taboo of talking about socialism. When people talk about, like, the golden age of America, from, like, the end of World War II up until 1970. That was thanks to organizing through socialist organizations, through communist organizations, like syndicalist organizations. I mean, they literally threatened with the threat of violence against the president of the United States if they didn't give him something, because they were on the heels. What had just happened previously was the Russian Revolution, and everybody knows what happened to the czars. And they're saying, like, if you don't want what happened to the czars to happen to you, you better give us something. And so out of that threat was created the New Deal, in all of its imperfection, mind you, because that screwed a lot of Black folks in the South, in particular, out of with the New Deal. But if you're talking about the Golden Age, that was where all that happened. It was where they had Keynesian supports that created that allowed the state to be able to rein in the worst parts. So, I mean, apparently of capitalism, so that it wouldn't run off the rails like it did with the Gilded Age. And the same people who are telling you that socialism doesn't work are the same people who are right now, like, ripping the copper wiring out of the walls, looking for magic unicorns in the White House, man. Like, these are a bunch of psychopaths who want to, who are telling you that, like, there's, that, we need to take all these people off of Medicare because they're taking all the money, when, like, when the American military is using enough fossil fuels to cover for, like, to be its own country. Like, it has the GDP of its own country, with, like, how much money it is given every year, and all that money could be going to us. All the money going to Israel to support their ability to have have subsidized housing and free healthcare. That money is going to them. That could be going to us. I mean,
and we are paying for socialized medicine in a different country, you all. We're paying for it.
And then they're like, oh, but and through all that, it's just like we're being told we have to struggle when we really don't.
Yeah.
It's all there. It's crazy.
And I'll wrap it up by saying this, because this is also true. If it weren't for unions, we would be working 50-hour work weeks
Absolutely.
now. And they were threatening our lives and threatening to kill us as workers if we didn't follow that. And so we could have been stuck working 10 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's another thing. Like, unions were a huge part of the reason why we got the New Deal. Because so the first iteration of police were slave catchers. The iteration of police that we have now were strike breakers, because bosses understood that if the workers stopped working, think about COVID. All these businesses were hemorrhaging money when people stopped going to work. That's why they used the government under a neoliberal era to be able to force people to go back to work, because they were hemorrhaging money. Nothing has changed in 100 years. The second we stop working is the second they start losing money. They need us to work. The problem is they don't want to pay us to work. They want to say that we're the ones being lazy about coming to work, that, musicians want more money and they need to do this and they need to do that, which is true. You could probably argue something, but at the end of the day, you can't get good music out of people if you are not paying them enough to live. You probably we got a bunch of great musicians who are living now, who were living during the golden era and the twilight years of the golden era, when things were still decent, who have been able to build that following by having institutional supports. And we're going to come into an era now where those supports are gone. And they're going to expect us as musicians to continue making high quality, high caliber music without high quality or high caliber pay. Granted, they weren't making bank 50 years ago, but they could still, at least, if you were worth your weight in gold, you could make enough money to be able to support a family. But we can't even have that now. And they're decimating every support that we have. That's why they come after unions so hard. That's why musicians aren't allowed to collectively bargain as a union, because they want to take that they need that exploitation. And it's not because they want to be mean. Like I said, there's a lot of venue owners who are wonderful people, but it's the way that the system expects them to be able to make that money. And it requires taking the profits being the unpaid wages to the musician. Like I said, and it's not just musicians. It's the bar. It's the people who work at the bar. It's the people even sometimes who own the bar, because sometimes there's somebody above them. There's somebody who's making more money than you, that's telling you that the person making as much or less than you is the problem. And we're all workers. And being able to unionize and create labor, and come together as labor is just one facet of how we fight back. But it requires having the politics and having the mindset of saying, I don't have to like you or love you to fight for you.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And we need to fight for the bare basic minimum of benefits. People should have access to that at a bare minimum.
Musicians should have, as musicians, we should have free healthcare.
Yeah.
As musicians, we should have subsidized housing. It's how are we going to rehearse our band if we ain't got nowhere to live? How are you going to expect us to get to the gig if we ain't got a car, if we can't make enough money to barely even fill a gas tank? Like I said, no shade on some musicians who are doing better, but it's if we don't work to lift all of our stations, then like eventually the supports for the musicians who are making a lot of money is going to come out from under them too. It's just going to take them longer to feel what we're feeling now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you know, and even then, like you think about those cats, like they're not encouraged to think about where they came from a lot of time. I mean, granted, we have some amazing musicians who do not forget where they come from. That's one thing I
100%.
do love about Portland. We got a lot of those musicians out here, but even then, like it shouldn't be on the backs of a handful of people when we have way more resources than that, or that are being taken up by other people who don't need them as much as we do. So,
well, let's put a pin in this because we've been at it for 2 hours.
I know we barely talked about music this entire time, man. Music to me is just, you know, that's why it always bugs me when people say music isn't political, because like music is political. There's no music that didn't involve politics first. And you got to change your views on politics, because, you know, slavery was politics, you know, repatriation is politics, you know, calling us illegal immigrants is politics. You know, you got to change your perception on politics if you want to change your perception on like how we collectively make this system better. But I mean, ultimately, man, like this music that I love, this music that I play, it doesn't come from a place of just like thinking that it's its own thing. You know, the struggle includes all of us, and we're all connected in it. And we got to find out where we fit in.
And where can people go to find your music?
Right now, my single, She's Fire, is on Bandcamp right now. So if you look up Santiago Ortega on Bandcamp, you can find me there. I'm also on other streaming services. If you want to support me and like pay for me to have things, then go to Bandcamp. If you just want to listen to it, YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere where you can stream, you can find me there. But if you want to support, definitely go to Bandcamp, because being paid by the stream is not the dream.
And I'll close this podcast the way I always close this podcast, folks. Be kind. We live on the same planet. We share the same air, and this world will just be a much better place if we treated everybody with dignity and respect. Thank you, my man. This has been amazing.
Woo! I hope I don't get you into trouble, brother.
Nope.